Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny and I'm starting a new reading vlog today for my Fresh Reads project of 2025. My Fresh Reads project, if you're not familiar with it, is me trying to encourage myself to read more new releases. I don't tend to read a lot of new releases. I tend to let them kind of languish on my TBR. And so I wanted to prioritize them more this year and just also participate in some of the more the fun book prize lists and things that come out all year long. And so I've created a whole list about that. And there's a video that talks all about the project itself and that I can link down below. But this is going to be a reading vlog. The whole idea was that I would read at least one new release or fresh read, which I'm calling reads from 2024 or 2023 a month. And so I already read my January one. It will be in my January reading wrap up. I didn't have time or inclination in January to make any reading vlogs, but I really enjoy making reading vlogs. I really enjoy watching reading vlogs because I love how they incorporate the life of the reader into the reading as well. And I realized I didn't make a lot of reading vlogs in 2024. I made some for my for the BookTube prize, which I'm not participating in as a judge this year, and I think I made maybe 2 others all year. So I want to make more reading vlogs. I love them. I find them fun to make, and I also find them fun to watch. So hopefully you will have fun watching this one. So what I wanted to do for this fresh read, my February fresh read of 2025, was just talk you through the book I've chosen and then proceed with the vlog. So for February, I pre-selected that I would be picking a book from the long list of the Women's Prize for Nonfiction. So this is only the second year that this is happening, this list, and I am a big reader of nonfiction. I read last year like a good 40%, I think, at least, of my reading was nonfiction. And I actually read the winner of the inaugural Women's Prize for Nonfiction, Doppelganger, by Naomi Klein, which I really, really loved. And so they've released the list. They released it yesterday. I was very excited to see what was on the list. And there's 16 books on the list. I'm going to talk you through them. And I'm going to talk you through my final decision on what I decided to read. And I'm currently waiting for it to be ready for me at the library, and then I'm going to go pick it up. So I'm going to take you on that. I'm going to show you what's going on in my life while I'm doing this reading vlog as well. So I'm just going to start based on where the website landed here. So the first one, I'm just looking off to my laptop here on the side, if you notice me looking to the side, is The Story of Hart by Rachel Clarke. So this book was described as a story of a heart transplant from one child to another. And I am a very emotional person. I'm very, I don't know what people call it, an empath or something like that, but just, I find I get pulled into someone else's experience very easily. I am a parent. I have 2 sons, 16 and 13, and 17 and 13, almost 14. And stories like this about something so emotional is something that I will not gravitate towards very easily. The reason being that I know how emotional it's going to make me, and depending on when I'm reading it, I'm just not, I have to be in the right headspace to pick a book like that. So I know right now that I'm not going to head towards that one. The next one is The Peep Show: Murders at 10 Rillington Place by Kate Summerscale. So this is a true crime, and I don't really read true crime. It's just not a genre that I feel a lot of interest in. This one is particularly about a serial killer killing women, and again, I'm not interested in really reading that topic. I have listened to a couple true crime podcasts, but they're usually podcasts that have a very specific angle. And that way I find it more interesting I find I can engage more with the topic. But no, I just couldn't do that one. The next one is Sister-in-Law by Harriet Wistrich, Fighting for Justice in a System Designed by Men. So this would normally be one that I would go towards. This is, a feminist angle. I didn't lean towards it for the now. I could see myself reading this in the future. But again, this is very specific cases that this author, I believe, is talking about trying, and the injustice around them, and the like inherent patriarchy that is rampant in the justice system. And I feel like that book might scare me, or frustrate me more than be a reading experience that I enjoy. So next we have Why Fish Don't Exist by Lulu Miller, a story of loss, love, and the hidden order of life. I'm not saying no to this one forever again. It sounds like it's a very genre-bending book. I might like it, but I didn't gravitate towards it first off. Okay, so far it sounds like I don't like any of these books, but that's not the case. Okay, there's a lot of books to go through. Next is Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. This one I did write down on my list, and it's the only one out of all these books that I had heard of before. I do like these types of memoirs where people talk about their experience with animals. I find some of them more successful than others, depending on the angle that the author takes. I would be interested in reading this at some point, but it had a very, very long, it had a 9-person wait list at the library. And so I thought, I don't think I'll go for that one right now. The next one is Private Revolutions, Coming of Age in a New China by Yuan Yang. And I did also put that one on my list. And that one was actually available at the library. So that one was actually pretty high up there. I considered putting that one on hold, but then went for another one instead. Next is The Eagle and the Hart, the Tragedy of Richard II and Henry IV by Helen Castor. I wouldn't say that history is something that I gravitate towards necessarily in nonfiction. Unless it's something that I'm researching specifically for my artistic practice, or just because it's a topic that I've always been interested in, I won't gravitate towards reading history. Although, again, apparently this is written in a really readable way. It reads probably more like a novel than nonfiction. So I wouldn't say I will never read this book. I'm just saying it's not, history as a topic is not one that I usually go towards. Next we have Ootlin by Jennifer Fagan. This is a memoir of growing up in the foster care system in the UK. I put this one on my list as well. My library does not have this one. So again, if my library gets it, I could definitely see myself listening to this, especially. It is a topic that interests me. Next is Embers of the Hands, Hidden Histories of the Viking Age by Eleanor Barraclough. So I'm very fascinated by the Vikings. Again, though, this is the same as the story of the Eagle and the Hart. It really depends on if I was looking into Vikings, if I was interested in that topic for whatever reason, I might read it. But I tend to want to watch something like this more than read about it. So watch a documentary, or I love watching fictional accounts of the Vikings. So this wasn't one that gravitated me right away. Agent Zoe, The Untold Story of Fearless World War II Resistance Fighter Elżbieta Zawacka by Clare Mulley. So I'm a little bit wary about reading more about World War II right now. I've read a lot, and many of us have read a lot about World War II. I'm sure she has a really interesting story. And I do feel like there's always more stories that need to be uncovered about World War II. But again, it's not something that I'm going to gravitate towards right now, just because I do feel a little bit oversaturated with reading about World War II. The next is What the Wild Sea Can Be, The Future of the World's Oceans by Helen Scales. I'm sure this is a great book. I'm sure it goes into detail about the ocean. Science books in general are not books that I gravitate to, again, unless I'm researching something specific. And even then, I find science books too detailed for me. I would rather watch it in a documentary. Okay, next I'm going to talk through the others that I put on my list, and then I'm going to talk you through the one that I chose. So next we have Autocracy, Inc., The Dictators Who Want to Run the World by Anne Applebaum. This is a very topical book. Personally, right now, I feel daily overwhelmed by what's going on politically in the United States and around the world. So I don't want to read a book about it right now. I think that would be overkill for me and overstimulating and just make me even more upset about the current situation, to be honest. Next, Tracker by Alexis Wright. So Tracker was another one that I put on my list. I've heard of this book because a lot of Australian booktubers were talking about it a few years ago. So I'm going to assume that it's just been published in the UK, and that's why it was eligible for this long list. It definitely sounds like an interesting book to me. Again, it was not on my library's list. My library is not great with Australian books, so a lot of the time I have to order Australian books myself, but that's definitely one that I would consider reading in the future. And I really want to read Alexis Wright. I've heard a lot about her writing, and I just need to start reading something from her. Next is Wild Thing, A Life of Paul Gauguin by Sue Prideaux. And I did write that one down. I'm interested in a woman's perspective in writing about Paul Gauguin. He was a questionable person in terms of the morals around his life, but a lot of people just talk about how great he was. So I am interested in delving a little more deeply into him. I do have a book called The Yellow House, which is about his time spent in Arles, France with Van Gogh. So I would probably read that one before reading this one, but they might inform each other. And obviously books about art and artists are books that are higher up on my priority list. Next, we have 1,000 Threads by Neneh Cherry. Neneh Cherry became popular when I was younger in the 90s, so I definitely have heard of her. I'm interested in her life. Her mother was also an artist, so I feel like she sounds like she had a really interesting life, and so that was another one that I put on my list. So just to recap quickly, we have 1,000 Threads, Wild Thing, Tracker, Raising Hare, Private Revolutions, Ootlin, and By the Fire We Carry, which is the only one that I did not talk about here, by Rebecca Nagle, The Generations-Long Fight for Justice on Native Land. So if you're new here, I read a lot of Indigenous literature that is especially centered around North America. And so when I was looking through the library list, this one was on there. There was no wait list for it, so I put this one on hold. I'm very interested to read more about a nation that I don't know about, especially I don't know the history of First Nations struggles in the United States the way I do in Canada, so I thought this would be a really good book to try out and to learn more. I have read, I can't remember the book right now. I've listened to it on audio. I'm going to put it right here for you. So I would say that book is right now the only nonfiction book that I have read about Indigenous, First Nations, Native Americans. If I'm wrong, I'm going to put other examples up here. So I do know way more about, First Nations on the Canadian side of the border than I do the US. So I thought this would be a perfect one to start with. So, By the Fire We Carry is my book, and I will check in again with you once there's more to chat about in this vlog. Hi everyone. Okay, I have a little update for you for this reading vlog. So, I was very excited to get The Fire We Carry, and I just looked at my holds list at the library, and it said that the copy that I had put on hold is not available, and the other copy is not available till March 6th. So I think what they may have done is put that book into like a fast lane read or something like that. So what I did was I put 1,000 Threads by Neneh Cherry on hold because it's the only one out of the other two that I was interested in that is available right now that no one else has checked out. So I put that one on hold. I'm going to go to the library once that one is available, and I'm going to check the Read Fast shelves, the 2-week checkout shelves, and see if The Fire We Carry is there. If it is, I'm going to check it out too, and that way I'll get to read it. I'll have to read it fast, but that's fine. If it's not there, then I'll read the Neneh Cherry. I'm going to read both of them anyway, I think. I wasn't planning on reading 2 books, but I think this is like part of, like with my Fresh Reads project, this is part of like me learning about reading new books, like when they first come out, or like how to work the library system in my favor. Basically, I'm kind of like experimenting here. I'm trying to see if I can, get these books out and read and like just adapt how I reserve things, because I will often not reserve a book if there's like a whole bunch of people in front of me. And I think, and I also don't want to put like 5 books on hold and then just wait and then have to like read them once they come available or like cancel the hold or whatever. So I'm just trying to learn like the best way to do this for me. It may change. But obviously, as soon as the list came out, I think I maybe should have put like some of the other ones on hold too at the same time, because what happened was someone checked out the Private Revolutionaries or the Yuan Yang one like right away. Someone must have checked it out like 2 days ago. And so me like not putting it on hold when I had the chance means that now it's like a month out before I could get that book. So anyway, learning here, learning as I go. All right, I'm heading out to do a walk, and maybe I'll take a little video to show you that. Hi, good morning everybody. So I just finished yoga and now I've driven to the library and I'm going to pick up 1,000 Threads and hopefully the other book, A Fire to Carry That Fire or whatever, if it's in the quick read section. So we're going to go into the library and have a look. Okay, we've had success. So I was able to find By the Fire We Carry by Rebecca Nagle in the speed read section. So I'm going to have to stop my other nonfiction and start this one and read it. It is just under, it's like there's a lot of notes. There's a lot of notes. 200 and... yeah, 230 pages. So I think 2 weeks is pretty doable for this for me. I am going to have to prioritize it quite a bit though. And then I also got 1,000 Threads. So I'll be reading 2 of them. And yeah, that's good. I also got this book, which I've already read, but I need to go through one section to take some notes for myself. So that is going to be what I do this afternoon when I get home. I have a at-home admin day. I will do some hand stitching as well, but I'm not going to the studio today. I'll try to go tomorrow. And I'm very excited to get started on these books and tell you all about them. Hey y'all. I still don't have my ideal place to do vlog check-ins yet, but we're working on it here in my green bedroom. Okay, so I wanted to check in about By the Fire We Carry by Rebecca Nagle. I am halfway. This is actually quite a short book. It has a lot of notes in it. So from here, so this is the actual text, and then this is all notes over here. So, it's actually a really short read. In case the page count is something that's turning you off from it, I would just, want to reiterate that there's a lot of notes. Okay, so this book is chronicling a few different things in a very succinct and well put together way. We're learning about the Cherokee, Seminole, Muskogee, and I think there's one other nation, Chickasaw, who were basically the indigenous nations that occupied the southern United States, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Tennessee, Oklahoma, around the Mississippi. The author, Rebecca Nagle, is a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and so she is actually talking about her ancestors in here as well, some specific ancestors of hers who are tied into the history of the displacement of the Cherokee Nation. And so it tied in with that is a murder case. So it's a murder case that I think, for all intents and purposes, could have been one that was not a big deal. Well, all murder cases are a big deal, but it would have been a murder case that was not remarkable in a lot of ways. But it became remarkable because of what it did for land rights for Indigenous peoples in the Supreme Court. So that is what she's chronicling here. So you get the details of the murder, you get the details of the way that the geography has been set up, and you get the very frustrating but not surprising details of the way in which the United States government and state governments systemically removed Indigenous Native Americans from their land. So it is a story that is as old as colonization, and these are the details of how these removals happened, and words that Rebecca uses, specifically ethnic cleansing, and this is a lot of this was done under the presidency of Andrew Jackson, and there's nothing new that I feel like I can tell you that's happening in this book, other than details of which I didn't know before, around specifics around how this systemic removal was done. But if you want the details, they're in this book, and they're done. It also chronicles, the fissures inside of the Cherokee Nation itself, because it was like a self-governing nation that had a whole, like, a democratic system that it was using to make big decisions. And within that system, there were people who tried to save the situation, but by doing so, they were breaking the rules that they themselves had set up around nationhood, and therefore justice was enacted around that. And the people who were dealt that justice were Rebecca Nagle's ancestors. So it's really interestingly tied together in that way. And I think that the writing is very good. It is it's giving details, but not too many details. It's keeping the story moving at a nice, good pace, but not too fast, not too slow. And you're getting to know the people who made this happen, but you're not knowing too much about them, because ultimately when you have something like this, which is a court case that goes through many, many levels of court and takes decades to execute, you obviously are not going to have just one person or two people who get this through. And so that being said, there's a lot of people involved, and you can't know every detail about all their lives. It would just make the book too long and too drawn out. And so I think Rebecca Nagle is doing a great job of keeping everything very succinct and moving through the story in a way that keeps you engaged. So I'm really enjoying it so far, and I haven't started 1,000 Threads by Neneh Cherry yet. I'm not sure when I'm going to start it. I may wait until I finish this one and then start that one. But I'm really enjoying the reading experience thus far. So I'll check in again with you when I finished it. Hey everybody. So I just wanted to check in with you. I just got to part 3 of By the Fire We Carry, and I just wanted to read you a couple passages just to give you a sense of the writing in this book, and also how important this book is in terms of explaining so much of Native American history with the U.S. The second part really goes through the court cases, the 2 court cases that went to the Supreme Court that helped the land in Oklahoma be reinstated, not reinstated, but be reminded to people that it is actually reservation land, and it was never decommissioned by Congress, because basically what this book goes into is the rules around how a reservation can be no longer a reservation. And one of those things is that Congress has to say in writing that it is taking the reservation away. And so that never happened. And so the Supreme Court ruled that because that never happened, it's still a reservation. But what Rebecca Nagle outlines in the book, the book is down here, that's what I'm looking at, is the fact that despite this, as land was found to have oil and natural gas on it, and people were grabbing for it trying to take it away from Indigenous people who owned the allotments of the reservations, that there was so much theft and swindling and murder. I mean, if you've read or if you've seen the film Killers of the Flower Moon, you know that was going on in Osage County, and so Rebecca Nagle also shows a couple more examples in this section of the book about other Native Americans who had their who were given guardians who were like running their lives and taking their money and swindling them and assaulting them and all kinds of terrible things. So this passage that I wanted to read you is they're referring to 3 different court cases that went before the Supreme Court that were around Native American rights and around land. And I wanted to read you this little section. All 3 cases began with white people or states breaking the law. Oliphant resisting arrest, Finch fishing, and New York illegally taking Oneida land. Instead of being held accountable or even restrained for their illegal behavior, the parties were rewarded. In a move repeated throughout our history, rather than uphold the law to protect Indigenous nations, our government remade the law to fit settlers' needs. So, if Native Americans would go, they would be given this land, and then settlers, squatters, random white people would come in, take the land, and there was no recourse. There was no way for Native Americans to stand up to get them to stop. They had no authority to get them to stop. They had the laws that were supposed to be in their favor to preserve the land for their use were just ruled over by other white people. And so this is something I think that's really important to understand in the history of Indigenous nations and First Nations in North America, is that you think that everything was done above board, and it was completely not done above board. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about living in a colonial state, is that these laws were not fair, and the process through which they were enacted were not fair, and Indigenous people are still living the consequences of that. And then I just wanted to read you this other little section. So this is talking about again this idea of the settlers and the way the land was kind of claimed. From the passenger windows of the St. Louis, San Francisco, and Kansas railroad lines, white people watched fertile farmland, valuable timber, and prime pastures roll by. And like generations of settlers before them, they coveted it. While it was illegal to move there without a permit from the tribes, they came in droves. We could chase out white men, and they would be right back the next day, a Yuchi man recalled. Sometimes there are more white people back than we had chased out. First, the intruders came by the thousands, then by the tens of thousands, until finally over 300,000 white people moved onto the 5 tribes' land until they outnumbered tribal citizens. In 1890, Muskogee citizens were still the majority of the people on their land. 5 years later, they were less than 20%. Whom do you see? One observer wrote. White men everywhere. The scarcest object is an Indian, and this is the Indian territory. So I just think I just wanted to reiterate that because I feel like there's so many stereotypes, there's so many myths, and there's so much lack of education around the way that Native Americans were treated as the United States was formed and as the settlers advanced. And this is the truth of what happened. And I think it's really important to say it, to read it, to reiterate it, to keep saying it until it is acknowledged and until it becomes the kind of common knowledge that we understand that our privilege here is ingrained and has been ingrained through each step of colonization, and we need to fix it because it's continuing to perpetuate extremely horrible conditions for most Native Americans and Indigenous people across North America. And the only way that we can help and that we can fix these things is to go back into the laws and to try to restitute these wrongs that were done. And, that doesn't mean that you are going to have to give your house away to somebody, but it does mean that you're going to have to see what's going on and try to stop further encroachment onto Indigenous land, because they don't have a lot of land left. And, oil companies and big corporations and all these other types of places are still trying to encroach on the small amounts of land they have left on this, and so that's what this story is about, and it's very well written and very affecting. So I have about let's see, I have about 40 pages left of the book, and I will check in again with you when I have finished it. Hey everybody, so I just finished By the Fire We Carry, and I just wanted to read you a really powerful paragraph from the epilogue. So here Nagle is referencing the origins of the United States, of the founding of the United States. And she says, the founding fathers wanted a democracy that, unlike the King of England, would derive its power from the consent of the governed, quotation marks. But they also wanted an empire, and so they built both, a democracy that at its center gave every citizen a voice and a vote, and an empire that, as it constantly expanded, controlled the lives and the lands of people who had no say. While over the centuries, who was included in that center of democracy changed, the edge of empire never went away. From indigenous nations to Guam and Puerto Rico to migrants detained at our border, there have always been people who lived under the raw power of our government, but without the liberties and privileges of our Constitution. Our inheritance as American citizens is a democracy that is often wildly anti-democratic, a government that rules by both consent and by conquest. I thought that was a very powerful paragraph and very true. And I think, I'm obviously not a citizen of the United States. I'm a Canadian, but I feel that that is very similar to how things are approached in Canada around Indigenous issues, but also around marginalized groups. That we have this idea that there's these fundamentals in place to protect people, but that ultimately there's still this minority who control the majority, and their control is often unjust and benefits them the most. So yes, By the Fire We Carry by Rebecca Nagle is a great book. I think that it's a really important read. This Indigenous and First Nation issues are of particular interest to me, and they are important to me in terms of my feeling of responsibility of living as a settler on land that my ancestors immigrated to. I know this is not a topic that a lot of people gravitate towards because they find it uncomfortable. And I understand why you would find it uncomfortable if you are also a descendant of immigrants. But what I want to say to you is that this is, so fundamentally important if you are a person that cares about equality and justice. Indigenous peoples are the first peoples, and they have arguably the least, they are the most disenfranchised in our societies in North America. And so to me, this has to change. This is not acceptable. It has never been acceptable. And we, in a time that's so full of disinformation, the only way that you can verify a lot of things that you hear or a lot of things that you're brought up with to believe are through reading these type of very important, well-researched and revealing historical texts that reinterpret the information by the people who are the ones who have been the victims and who have been disenfranchised. And so it's just really important to support authors who are doing this type of work, journalists, authors, activists who are trying to change these situations and are trying to, bring the truth, the facts, maybe the truth is the wrong word, bring the facts to light. So I definitely would encourage you to read this. I am curious to see if it will make the shortlist. I have a feeling that it won't, because I feel like this style of book is not as sexy as others, in terms of the nonfiction world. I think that there's a lot of people have hierarchies of what they enjoy reading about. And when you look at some of the topics that a lot of the nonfiction list has, I feel like something like this could be very much looked over for something that's a bit more heartwarming or that has a bit more sparkle. But to me, this is the type of book that I would like to see make a short list. Okay, so that is By the Fire We Carry's vlog. I am going to continue on with my Fresh Reads vlog, and I will pick this up again when I start 1,000 Threads by Neneh Cherry, and I will update you as well on my status with my Fresh Reads for March. Because the Women's Prize for Fiction long list has also been announced, and I have chosen 2 books from that list, and they are currently on hold at the library, but I will reveal which ones I've chosen in the next Fresh Reads vlog, and hopefully I will even get my hands on one of them before the end of the next Fresh Reads vlog. So thank you so much for watching, and I will be back again soon with another video.